Alright, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rakakwadash. I want to give double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, and grace and peace to you elect around the four winds, believing and pushing this truth in all sincerity. May the blessing of election be upon your houses. This is your fellow servant, Rakalia from the GMS Orlando camp, coming at you with another impromptu lesson. I don't have a title for tonight's lesson as of right now. I kind of just pressed record on this one. I just got done watching the Elder Yashawama's recent video going into, the lamentation and the languishing that's increasing in the earth. And at the end of his lesson, he played this video that's on your screen from Middle Nation entitled The Cult of the West, How Trauma Becomes Doctrine, from Shahid Bosin. And I wanted to get into a little bit of this video for myself through the Spirit, because there are a lot of beautiful points that were being made that ultimately circle back to what our elders and apostles have been preaching and teaching for many years now, which is the fact that all this lamentation and languishing is due to the trauma culture that's been appropriated and glorified here in the West, and pushed by the elites of this society, who we understand to be the elites of Esau, Edom, the so-called white man. All right, your Gettys, your Oppenheimers, your DuPonts, your Rockefellers, all right, those who control and mismanage the resources, and through their so-called guidance, the world has been driven into a cataclysmic state of lamentation. And it's only going to continue to get worse from here on out. And that's why the Lord told us, in Micah 2:10, he said, "Arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest. Because it is polluted, it shall destroy you, even with a sword of destruction." And the Lord told us, man, arise and depart, mentally and spiritually, that it is, from this so-called American culture. Because when you buy into the so-called American culture, you buy in to pollution. And you buy in essentially to a perpetual state of slavery. You buy into corruption. You buy into debauchery. So the Lord said, man, arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest. Our America was never meant to be the resting place of you Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and the American Indians. All right, this is just a temporary state, the Lord put us in to amend our ways, to turn back into him and acknowledge, our need for a savior and our need for the Lord. This is temporary. This is not our rest. And as America continues, to trek, it's being made clearer and clearer that this isn't our rest. Because America is getting more and more polluted as the days go by. It's getting more and more corrupt and more weird, man. It's getting weirder by the minute. So again, it says, "Arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest, because it is polluted. It shall destroy you, even with the sword of destruction." And this guy, Shahid Bosin, goes into the pollution, that's essentially taking place here, and how it's become a culture. It's become a culture. But we're going to get into it. We're going to get into it however long it plays. We're just going to go through the Spirit. We're going to grab a couple of precepts. Lord, when this is edifying unto you elect. All right. Hey, and all of this is coming out here in these latter days because the Lord is exposing, all of the devices and crafty counsel that's taking place, from these Edomites. At one point in time, these things were hidden, but now through the Spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, all right, inquisition has been made into these counsels that are ungodly. This is Wisdom of Solomon 1:9. "For inquisition shall be made into the counsels of the ungodly, and the sound of his word shall come unto the Lord for the manifestation of his wicked deeds." All right, now through the Spirit and power of the Lord, Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai, inquisition is being made into these different wicked counsels. All right, and now light is being shined on all these things that have been done in the dark. All of this programming that Esau, all this program that Esau has been doing for generations, to get it to the point to where he's able to issue in that RFID microchip, the mark of the beast, into society, without a hitch. But let's get into it.
Really, the West is a cult. I mean, I've said it before. The West, America is a cult. And I'm not being hyperbolic. This is why Americans specifically are immediately identifiable, no matter where they are. You know, why they really come across as strange and brainwashed
And
to everyone.
I've had the experience, as I've traveled to different countries, to see this firsthand. In Brazil and the DR, Americans are easily identifiable because they have this main character syndrome. They have this main character syndrome, which really is a play off of Esau Edom's pride. A lot of the culture that has been adapted, in amongst these Israelite communities, amongst these different communities of these different nations, is really an appropriation of Esau's pride. To walk around like the biggest, the baddest, and to flaunt everything that you have, is really an appropriation of the Idumean culture. And Americans are very easily identifiable, wherever you go in the world.
Else in the world, if they travel, if you interact with an American, you genuinely feel like you're talking to someone who just has a really insular frame of reference, a fabricated sense of reality, a sense of reality that only makes sense within the American cult compound. It's always a non-interaction interaction. You know what I mean? Like no actual communication takes place in those interactions. It's like they have a stencil, like they're looking through a stencil, they're looking through a filter, and everything that comes from them adheres to that stencil, and nothing that does not adhere to that stencil can reach them. That's programming. That's what that is. That's brainwashing. A cult is never going to tell you that they're brainwashing you. They won't call their indoctrination programming. They'll call it deprogramming. They'll call it deprogramming. A cult will tell you that everything that you have ever been taught, everything that you have ever felt, everything that you have ever known, your whole view of reality, all this time has been satanic.
Right. And before we move further, I just want to get that definition of cult for those of you who may not know, what it means. Because that word has been thrown around loosely a lot here in these latter days, to classify Hebrew Israelites, when it really can classify Christians or any group of people, that have a certain belief system. This is the definition of cult off the etymology online. It says, from 1610s, worship, homage, a since now obsolete, a particular form or system of worship, which can be attributed to all of these different religions in the world. And nowadays it's thrown around loosely, to demonize and to dehumanize, different sects and groups of people, especially, the Hebrew Israelites, who now in these latter days have been coming with a lot of truth, and since this world has been forged and framed on lies, when the truth is presented, it's seen in a bad light, it's seen as occultic, it's seen as, some form of evil, but this is the actual definition of what it is, or of what it is to be a cult. It says, worship, homage, a particular form or system of worship. So going back into this video, from Sahih Bosen, when he's talking about the West has become a cult, the West has formed and forged, their own form of worship. The West has caused these people to worship this system, that they've created.
We here in the cult, we will dismantle all the lies and we will guide you to the ultimate truth. That's how they'll put it. Well, that's the West. That's so-called liberalism. And what they want to deprogram is your fitrah, your innate human nature. And it's escalatory. Again, just like a cult, it's escalatory. You know how these sorts of, well, I won't name any, but these weird sort of insular, secretive cults that exist. They have this sort of tiered system of revealing so-called higher and deeper truth.
Esau, that's how, and I'm going to be pausing this video, if you want to watch the whole video, here it is on your screen, and be pausing here and there through the spirit. But, that's how Esau works, in general. He works through gradualism. And you notice that on every sense and facet of this society. When it comes to the alphabet community, that was something, being widely accepted. That was something that started off, as, oh, well, this might be a disease. Then they changed it from being a disease, to something that's inherited, it's genetic. Then it changed from being genetic to choice. And now we're here to where we are today, where, now it's just a free fall. And that's the same thing for marriages, for relationships, and so on and so forth. Our Esau has deteriorated these different facets of society, and nationhood gradually. And the same thing is happening when it comes to that mark. All right.
When they let you know what the cult's really about. They don't start right off the bat with the really bonkers stuff. They don't tell you about the mothership the moment that you walk through the door. They'll tell you about hacks for making you more productive that the cult can teach you, how you can be more centered, heal your trauma, make you more positive and so on. But once you buy in and you get into that ecosystem, then you start to move up the ranks within their internal hierarchy. And then you start getting told things that you didn't hear at the beginning, like the cult leader is a messiah, or we're all descended from alien spirits, or what have you. That's when they start to get the weird stuff. They tell you to let go of your relationships and so on. Then you move up more and find out that you're supposed to share your spouse with the rest of the cult. It gets weirder the higher you go. We're all preparing right now.
American culture. Now it's become normalized to share your spouse. With the option of divorce being so freely, offered up to a lot of these women. The head brother of the Camp Nahoya, he made a beautiful point a while back. Basically what you have today in American society is domestic prostitution. To where these women have been passed around. And it's just become exactly what he's saying. It's become exactly what he's saying. These relationships nowadays are really just a domestic form of prostitution.
For our departure to another galaxy. Here, have some Kool-Aid. It escalates. That's how they go. That's how they do. And the longer these cults go, the more permissive they get within the cult, the more corrupt, the more debauched, the more depraved they get. Well, again, that's the West. That's America. Honestly, if you look at it that way, you can't unsee it. They're trying to deprogram your fitra, and it is escalating. And just like in many cults, they focus on women. They focus on brainwashing and indoctrinating and corrupting women through all sorts of moral inversion. They teach that everything that's moral is immoral, that there's shame in dignity and dignity in shame. It's inversion. Modesty and chastity are oppression. Exploitation and objectification are liberatory. This is a cult deprogramming your fitra, deprogramming your nature, and it's escalating. And one of the arguments that cults always use is that their members are happy. They're content. They're comfortable. They drank the Kool-Aid and they like the Kool-Aid. So who are you to call them brainwashed and enslaved? But see, it's all about framing and prioritization. So like
and
the
that's
West.
why, the majority of these people think it's strange that we don't partake in the same riotous nature that they partake in. This is 2 Peter. First Peter, Salaki, chapter 4. In verse 12, it says, "Beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial." No, Salaki, that's not it. Excess and riot. Right, this is 1 Peter 4 and verse 4. I'm going to start at verse 3. It says, "For the time past of our life may suffice us to have wrought the will of the Gentiles, when we walked in lasciviousness, lust, excess of wine, revelings, banquetings, and abominable idolatries. All right, when we walked according to the course of this world, when we were once, when we were all once, bought into this American culture. It says, wherein they think it strange that ye run not with them to the same excess of riot, speaking evil of you. All right, now that we've departed, from this way of life, from this train of thought, and we've cleaved unto the standard of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. All right, now, they think it's strange of us. They think it's strange that we don't run to the same excess of riot. They speak evil of us because we're walking contrary to the standard that's been upheld in this world. And the Lord told us of this, man. The Lord told us it will be like this.
Western liberalism, America, etc. They deprioritize and they negate every metric of well-being besides so-called freedom, right? Nothing matters more than freedom. That's the official doctrine. So as long as cult members feel that they have this freedom, then nothing else is important. And they can't even articulate any dissatisfaction that they might feel, It's just like someone who has bought into the internal logic of a cult. That's Americans. No matter how objectively horrible, no matter how objectively abnormal things are within your compound, you can rationalize it. You can anesthetize yourself to it because you have absorbed the cult logic, the cult doctrine that makes it all make sense to you. You wake up every day in America already in debt. Before your eyes even open, you owe on your house, you owe on your car, you owe on your education, you owe for your health. Your whole life is...
and I got to play this again, but I also got to get this, because the Lord told us it would be like this as well, especially for us Israelites. This is Haggai chapter 1 in verse 5. It says, now therefore thus saith the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. Ye have sown much and bring in little. Ye eat, but ye have not enough. Ye drink, but ye are not filled with drink. Ye clothe you, but there is none warm. And he that earneth wages to put into a bag with holes. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. And the Lord basically, man, framed out everything that this guy is saying. All right, from the moment you are born here in America, Babylon the Great, you are in debt. You are in debt and chasing and, and working and clawing your way up to try to get out of that debt. But the system is set up to where very few people, matter of fact, no one gets out of this indebted state of life. You're always going to stay in debt the way this system is set up, because the elites of the society have formed a state of perpetual slavery, perpetual servitude, and they're going to try to further that servitude, by this chip, man. But this is a beautiful point, man.
You wake up every day in America, already in debt. Before your eyes even open, you owe on your house, you owe on your car, you owe on your education, you owe for your health. Your whole life is chained to subscription services. Debt slavery, wage slavery, subscription slavery. Your whole existence is leased. It's on loan from the moment you're born. From the moment you're born, you are plugged into a system that feeds on you financially, psychologically, spiritually, and you're told that all of that is freedom. You're told it's the best thing that ever happened to humanity.
And why is
it's the best?
And why do people believe that this is freedom? Because going back to the curses in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, the Lord said that this devil will put yokes of iron upon our neck until we were destroyed. Until we were destroyed. The work has already been worked. The destruction, the dismantling, of our spirit and our mind has already been done for the majority of our people. That's why there's no need for a physical yoke of iron upon our neck, because the majority of our people believe that they are free. They've bought into this system. They've bought in, to the culture that's been presented to them and beat into them,
System there is. And you should be grateful. You should be proud. Tell me that isn't cult-like. You live in a bubble of euphemisms. You work like a slave. You sell your time, which is what your life is, by the way. It's time. Your presence in this world is nothing but time. And actually, you don't even sell it, because selling it would imply that you have a choice, but you don't have a choice to sell your time. Do you understand? You have to. That's what I mean. You're literally born in debt. Because from the moment that you enter the world, if you live in the West, if you live in America, well, you have to start justifying your existence within the prevailing profit model. You know, whatever intrinsic value that you have as a human being, whatever purpose you might have in this life, is subordinated by necessity to a job that you don't care about for people who you don't even know, in a company that would replace you tomorrow with a machine or with AI or with a robot if they could. Your dignity is tied to your productivity.
And that has led to the plague of low self-esteem, that plagues our nation especially. A lot of the men of our nation especially believe that their dignity and their confidence, or Salakia, they have their dignity and their confidence tied to their productivity, what they can bring to a relationship or what they can bring to this world. And that's where their confidence and their dignity is rooted in. And for us that are hopefully led, our confidence and our dignity is rooted in Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai. The Lord has taught us what it is to have true confidence, to have true dignity. And that is the understanding of his will. In the understanding of his will, that's where true dignity and confidence lies, is in the Lord. Because everything that is in this system is fickle, and the Lord is not. The Lord is long suffering. The Lord is a constant. Matter of fact, he's the only constant in our life. He's been the only constant in our life, and will continue to be the only constant in our life.
If you don't produce, you don't deserve to eat. If you don't, in a company that would replace you tomorrow with a machine or with AI or with a robot if they could. Your dignity is tied to your productivity. And if you don't produce, you don't deserve to eat. If you don't produce, you don't deserve shelter. You don't deserve peace. You're only worth whatever you can generate monetarily for someone else. So you cope. You consume, you scroll, you eat, you buy things that you don't need on credit to reward yourself with the cold comfort of frivolous goods. Reward yourself for all the hard work that you're doing, only to keep the cycle going. You bury yourself in entertainment that makes you feel a little bit less numb for just a few hours. Imagine, the only way that you can feel anything similar to being alive is to watch fiction. But you think that's normal because that's what everyone in the cult does. You live alone with little to no human interaction, no human connection. You walk through crowds like...
Isolation is one of the biggest tools for misinformation. When you isolate someone, you're better able to misinform them. And that's led to now, and once you're isolated, now all your information and your programming comes from one, controlled source, which is the government. And it goes into that movie, Big Brother. The same concept is in the movie Big Brother. You isolate and you misinform, and you're better able to control the populace, man. Because now the people have one controlled form of information, and that is whatever you give them. And now when they enter into society, everybody's been programmed with the same misinformation, and they're walking around, everybody's fucking lost.
But you think that's normal because that's what everyone in the cult does. You live alone with little to no human interaction, no human connection. You walk through crowds like a ghost. Your family, most likely, is scattered, is broken, is estranged, again, just like a cult. These are fundamental things that cults do. They break all your relationships. They alienate you from your family. Even your friends.
Elder Yashwama made a beautiful point, as well. The Lord has isolated us from our families essentially for our good, for righteousness' sake, for our growth's sake, because we had to take on the yoke of Yahweh Shai, and oftentimes, and upon taking upon this yoke of Yahweh Shai, family can be a burden, they can be a hindrance, to our spiritual and mental growth, because they're fully bought into the system. The Lord is deprogramming us from a lot of this Babylonian bullshit. So we have to be isolated in a sense, for some time, for us to be able to grow, and to elevate past this polluted way of life. It's for righteousness' sake.
Likely are just avatars on the screen, curated versions of people pretending to not be as miserable as you are, with their Instagrammable perfect lives that no one's actually living. No one lives like that. That's called lateral reinforcement of cult dogma. Your body is malnourished but overstimulated. You're chemically altered from morning to night, coffee to wake up, pills to concentrate, sugar to cope and make you feel better, weed to make you relax, porn to escape, and then melatonin to fall asleep. You don't even know what it feels like to be natural anymore, to live naturally without chemical augmentation.
Man, that's heavy. That's heavy. It's a lot of things, coming into my head through the spirit, man. If I had time to sit down and get and prepare, a lot of things I want to bring out. I just had to press record through the spirit, man, because this is beautiful. Let me run that back. Oh man, the chemical alteration, from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep, and it's all been strategically designed to be this way, to make it easier for you to adapt to this biohumanism that's taking place right now, to the integrating of technology into your organism.
And then melatonin to fall asleep. You're altered from morning to night, coffee to wake up, pills to concentrate, sugar to cope and make you feel better, weed to make you relax, porn to escape, and then melatonin to fall asleep. You don't even know what it feels like to be natural anymore, to live naturally without chemical augmentation. You don't remember what it's even like to be human, because this is the only version of a human that the cult defines as human. The cult brands approved addiction as self-care, dysfunction as beautiful. This is a cult. Sex isn't sacred anymore. It's not even intimate. It's a commodity. It's a performance. It's a sport. You're taught that your body is your sole value. Desirability is your whole identity, especially if you're a woman. You're trained to be attractive, not decent. To be desired, not loved. In the West, you treat people, relationships, like consumables, and then you wonder why you feel disposable, why you are disposable. Because cults always flatten people to pure function. You can't have anything personal, anything intimate, anything private. And every cult almost eventually becomes a sex cult. I mean, the People's Temple, the Branch Davidians, the Children of God, NXIVM, obviously. They almost always go this way. Cults almost always go this way. That's why I said you have to pay attention to what Western popular culture is doing to women. You have to pay attention to that. Because cult governance depends on dissolving personal borders. And sexual access is the crowning test of loyalty. Because that violates the most intimate frontier between people. I mean, look at your culture, so-called. Honestly, you need to just remove the last 3 letters of that word. It's not a culture, it's a cult. I mean, if you look at how cults do, you'll start with platitudes about free love and whatnot. Well, as a society, you've already gone through that phase in the 1960s. And of course, then that free love idea promotes suspending judgment on all forms of sexuality and promiscuity, normalizing all sorts of behaviors. And then it moves on to sexual healing within the cult. I mean, that concept, sexual healing, was already established in the public mind through song. And then that concept, that further normalizes all sorts of practices, even truly perverted and dark practices. It promotes that as therapeutic, living out your wildest, darkest fantasies without ever actually addressing the sick thing inside you that makes you even have those fantasies. That's never addressed. It's just, the idea is it's better for you to do this consensually with someone rather than to force yourself on someone. Force someone else to do this dark fantasy that you have by force. And that's framed as healthy. Think that through. The culture, the cult, does not help you purge yourself of toxic urges. It provides you pathways for acting on them.
And that's
Because
directly contrary, to what the Lord has presented in the form of this truth. Because the Lord didn't give us access and doesn't promote, the indulgence in our different lust. The Lord promotes obedience. It's like I'm trying to think of this and talk at the same time. The Lord promotes the obedience and to His will, and the taming of your flesh. The temperance. That's what the Lord promotes: temperance. Dignity. He promotes integrity. All right, and temperance. Mastering the flesh and mastering these different desires that come with the flesh. Not giving yourself over to it, but rather living through the Spirit, as best as possible. This is 2 Corinthians 10 and verse 4. For the weapons of our warfare, verse 3, for we walk in the flesh, but we do not war after the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through the Heavenly Father to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of the Heavenly Father, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Hamashiach. All right, and that's what the truth has done to us, contrary, all right, to the doctrine that's being pushed here in the West. All right, like he was going into. All right, you're incentivized basically to follow after your lust. This cultish fashion doesn't promote the healing from that. It promotes the indulgence.
the culture, the cult, does not help you purge yourself of toxic urges. It provides you pathways for acting on them. Because as far as the cult is concerned, all those toxic urges that you have are just levers for creating dependency, levers for creating addiction. And then the way cults normally go, traditionally, they start to move basically into turning cult members into sexual slaves for those at the top of the cult hierarchy, with all the members vying for their favor. And I mean, that's all across your social media. Highest bidder access, women objectifying themselves, women sexualizing themselves for sponsorship. And again, that's lateral indoctrination reinforcement between women. In this case, normalizing degradation, sexualization, objectification, pornification, the flattening of women to their function inside the cult. That's your culture. That's all across social media. And like I've talked about before, women and girls are made immeasurably more neurotic, more depressed, more anxious, more insecure, all because of social media. But within the accepted logic of the cult, you can't say that. So you just post a picture of yourself at the gym and wait for the cult to approve you. And of course, in terms of this, the culture has made all the men eunuchs. Just like the eunuchs who used to guard the harems. You get to see everything, but only on your phone screen, only on your laptop screen, your computer, porn, OnlyFans, whatever. You're eunuchs.
Which has led to an even bigger case of degeneracy in society. Because when you have this amount of men who are deprived from access to women and families and reproduction, it creates monsters. It creates monsters, and you see that on a small scale in these different jailhouses. These men who are deprived of the feminine touch, the ability to access women, they turn into monsters. They turn into absolute monsters. And that's that same culture is in the American society today. They're just not physically behind bars, so to speak. But that same monstrous, debaucherous culture is in the society today. And it's been engineered this way,
Your men are eunuchs. And all of you people who talk about high value men and alpha males and so on, that's
The most
your.
interaction the average male gets, sadly, is through social media. That's why when they get out in public, a lot of men don't know how to talk to women or interact with women because they've never had that experience. They've seen these different beautiful women online and all this in different parts of the world. And when it comes to, seeing one in person, they can't control themselves. It's a form of social anxiety that kicks in. They don't know how to control themselves. They go into that social media identity, fanboying and Googling over these women. Instead of treating these relationships how they're supposed to be treated through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahushua. Treating these different interactions with women, how they're supposed to be, how they were intended to be, which is for the furtherance of our nation, and the furtherance of family, which builds a strong nation. But everything here has been sexualized. Esau's changed the times and the laws, and everything in society has been sexualized, which is one of the highest forms of deviancy, in witchcraft. This is Isaiah 24:5. The earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore hath the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men left. All right, and through the changing of the times and laws, this is what we get. This is the type of society that you get, now, like he's getting into. I ain't gonna play too much longer. I'm gonna play a couple of more seconds, and then I'm gonna close it out. I really wanted to get into this whole video, man, but I don't think I'll have the time.
Lateral reinforcement of the hierarchy. That's your lateral reinforcement of cult logic that you've absorbed. You've accepted that what the cult tells you should want is correct, because that's what the elites have. And you've accepted that also that only the elites can have it. Never mind that the it that we're talking about here is a plastic, soulless sex slave. It's moral inversion. And the elite of a cult are always the most degenerate. So look at the elite of your society. Well, these are the ones who built your system. They're the ones who programmed your cult. And they are undeniably the most depraved, the most immoral, the most degenerate people that you can even imagine. Like, just for me, I can tell you, from my generation, basically all the music and all the movies that we grew up on, all of that was produced by truly demonic perverts. Tell me that isn't programming. You think they're giving us anything good to listen to, anything good to watch that's going to help our brains? No, it's all for programming purposes. And it will reflect the ideology of that cult. And again, just like in a cult, conformity is relentlessly enforced. You memorize scripts and you recite those scripts just like dogma. Not because you necessarily believe in them or even understand them, but because they are the scripts of the cult. Right or left, liberal or conservative, whatever the case may be. The cult has relieved you of having to think, You're only allowed to think that you are choosing. Within that totalistic cult compound of America.
We'll skip past a couple of minutes of this.
Occupied, or you're otherwise interfering with them. Malaysians are happier than you and healthier than you. Indonesians are happier than you. Saudis, Emiratis, Kuwaitis, etc., etc. They're safer than you. Their streets are not nearly as violent as yours. Their lives are generally more affordable than your life. Their families are stronger. Their families are more stable. Their mental health, their emotional health is better than yours, unquestionably. They don't kill themselves like you do. Their rates of addiction are far lower than yours. They produce far fewer criminals than you do. They have far fewer issues of like body dysmorphia, eating disorders, low self-worth, low self-esteem, depression, loneliness, anxiety, on and on and on. They're more connected as a society. Their relationships are stronger. I mean, I'm not trying to say that they're perfect in the Muslim world or in the global South, but they are unquestionably better, happier, and healthier people than what you have done to your people in the West, especially in America.
And all that's coming to an end, because the true deprogramming is going to come upon the Lord's return, wherein the Lord will exact equity and justice in the earth, man. All right, justice and judgment, like it says in Jeremiah, the 23rd chapter, the 5th verse. All right, upon the Lord's return, will issue in that healing. I went into a lesson on that the other day. Yahweh Shai is a representation of healing. And upon his return, Yahweh Shai is going to heal all of this trauma, that has been built up and glorified here in America, Babylon the Great, man. This trauma culture will be no more. Yahweh Shai, the physician, is coming to heal that, man. This is Malachi 4:1. It says, "For behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yet all that do wickedly, shall be stubble. And the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts, that I shall leave them neither root nor branch." And the Lord is going to uproot this system. He's going to uproot this wicked, polluted culture and establish a culture that is incentivized and ran on righteousness. Incentivize strong families. The Lord is going to incentivize strong families, strong nation. All right, he's going to incentivize the ways of life and create a culture of life. And that's what we have our hope in. That's what we place our hope in. That world that is coming, and it's coming soon. Sooner than these people think, man. With that being said, that's all I have for tonight, Lord. When this is edifying that you elect, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Lukakwadash, and double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well. Grace and peace to you elect around the four winds, believing and pushing this truth in all sincerity. May the blessing of election be upon your houses. Shalom. Stay up.